7 years.
Since 2000, year 2000.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
7 years is a long time. A lot changes in 7 years.
Yeah.
I know I have.
But you know the great thing is that we're all here.
Yeah.
Oh, how
Yeah.
about that? Thank God. Thank God for that.
That's such a blessing that we're all here and we're all doing well.
I know in 7 years I've matured in my acceptance of being HIV positive. And I feel really good about that today.
Yeah. We have progressed on back into a normalcy of our lives. You know, I think 7 years ago we were all kind of teeter-tottering on fear and
just
not knowing,
consumed, being
and
I
consumed
agree.
with it and not
Yeah.
knowing what was
HIV
going to
and all
happen
that.
to
Yeah.
us and trying to find some semblance of a life.
My name is May Gore, and I'm here today to introduce the third video with Sisters Alive. Our first video was in 2000. At that time, it was 6 ladies who agreed to come together and talk about living with HIV. One day after Denise Waddy was interviewed, she made her transition. And today, it's 5 of these women still standing tall, talking about living with HIV and AIDS.
The difference in the videos that I participated in before on HIV and AIDS, the first one in 2000 and the second one in 2007, is first of all, I'm older. I'm 64 years old. I was initially diagnosed when I was 39 years old. And my health has changed. I'm so much more comfortable with being HIV positive. However, I'm also so much more aware of how to take care of myself today, how to exercise self-care. I don't always think that everything is HIV related. However, I take all the necessary precautions to be well. The health challenges for me today that were not present in the last video in 2007, now in 2021, the focus on HIV and AIDS does not seem to be as strong, as focused. For example, in 2007, I had a GYN doctor that only saw women that were HIV positive, because the way HIV shows up in women's health care can be different for someone that is not HIV positive. And because of the advancement in medications and treatment, it seems that the focus has lessened on the health care for women that are HIV positive. I would say today in 2021, as opposed to the previous videos that I participated in 2007 and in 2000, for women to have a mindset of protection, education is still ever so important. And it is more incumbent upon women to seek out their own knowledge today. Because in 2000, there were many HIV support groups. There were many more avenues available to get information on prevention and education about HIV. And so in 2021, because that is not as prevalent, it's incumbent upon women to demonstrate their own self-care, to take responsibility for their own health care, to get tested, to have safe practices. It is incumbent upon women today in 2021 to practice being responsible for their own health care. And part of that is being educated about HIV and how they can prevent the spread of infection to themselves. And first and foremost, we have to get tested, because we have to know where we are so that we can know where we're going. And another thing that I would add is, in my own personal HIV journey, I would say within the last 10 years, I have really, really focused on self-care. How to take care of myself. How to identify with changes in my body. Some of which could be related to HIV, some unrelated, but could be accelerated by the fact that I am HIV positive. So it is important that I engage in self-care activities such as exercise, such as going to the doctor regularly, such as meditating and knowing the benefits of things of alternative medicine that can help keep me stabilized with my HIV journey. I see my future in living with HIV to be different from the 2000 video and the video from 2007. Here in 2021, I am now 64 years old. I am retired, semi. Some people would say I'm not. And my future is such that I have to really, really take good care of myself. That's the most important thing that I can do at this time. I have wonderful relationships with my healthcare practitioners. I keep them informed of all changes that occur in my body, in my emotional state as well. And it is my future to be an advocate for women that are HIV positive, to be available for support for women that are HIV positive, and to help dispel some of the myths that are associated with being HIV positive. In today's climate, with the advancement of the medications, there are so many things that are different for me now than in 2007 and in 2000. Sexual activity is different. You know, with medications today, they say if you're undetectable, then you can't transmit the virus. However, what happens if you get sick? What happens if you get sick and your T cell count goes down and your viral load expands? What happens? So, you know, it's just so important that first and foremost, I stay in touch with the information, that I stay in touch with my medical practitioners, and that I stay in touch with myself.
I'm more aware of who Troy is and my needs that I have for myself. Usually being a caregiver, caring for everyone else, I neglected myself a lot, but in 2021, I realized in order for me to even care for others, I must take care of myself. And being HIV positive, it is extremely important that I, care for myself, take my medications, take care of my mental health, so I can be there for others. That's the difference for me from when we first shot the video in 2000, 2007, and now in 2021, I'm more self-aware. In 2000, for the faith community, it was more churches willing to do more education. Still the stigma was around. 2007, you still had the education, maybe less stigma in the church, especially in the church that I belong to. I was comfortable. For me in 2021, I don't see the church being as active in the HIV community with education, testing, as it was back then. So I think now the church has to come back and come more involved in the HIV community again, so that we can reach people not just of the community, but all people. Because for some reason, I think the faith community is not, because they have opened their arms to people with HIV, the stigma may not be there. But I believe that the lack of education within the church needs to become more involved in the community again.
Okay.
As I have gotten older, I am now 54 years old. I was 27 when I was diagnosed, and what I can truly say is I broke into silence. I talk, I have a voice, and I'm not afraid to use it. But also there are body changes that at first I would always associate it with being HIV positive. So again, that fear would come. For me, being HIV positive, I became comfortable, but it seemed like every time I would become comfortable, something else was changing in my body, which made me go back to wondering, is this HIV or is this me aging? So again, there's another level of becoming comfortable within myself all over again. It's becoming older and not associating everything with HIV, but not ignoring that it could be HIV related as well. I don't know if I would have anything different to say, but I would want to encourage the women with HIV, live your life to the fullest. Don't take for granted anything. Just live your life to the fullest. Don't be afraid to dream. Don't be afraid to use your voice. I think we need, as women, need to empower ourselves, but to empower one another. And being HIV positive is not a death sentence, but it's a wake-up call that we need to stay into care, be connected, ask the questions that you need to ask, so that way you can be empowered to take care of yourself. So that, I think that would be my message this time, is to care for yourself, because if you're not able to care for yourself, you're not able to care for anyone else properly. In 5 years, I look forward to celebrating, getting ready to be 60 in 5 years. I also look forward to the healthcare system to improve, even more further advancement in the HIV care. I also look forward to raising more awareness again in the church and in the faith community about HIV and AIDS, and hopefully being able to help those that have been silent to break the silence.
The first video in 2000, I would consider myself pretty much a novice. I was learning about HIV and the different times, and being a black woman in community living with HIV, and the stigma that was behind that. Learning to navigate through my relationships with family and friends, and being HIV. In 2007, I had become a rebel, pretty much a rebel. I had gotten myself involved in a lot of activism and a lot of community organizations, and been out there on the front lines talking and teaching and being involved in getting better treatment and getting people information about HIV. In 2021, I'm still an activist, but I have a history behind that because I'm 75 years old now. In 2007, I was, 68? 58? I can't add very well, but anyway, I was younger. Now I'm 75, soon to be 76. And although I'm an activist, still, I'm kind of mellow, and I'm trying to live my life into the future of being an aging black HIV positive woman. From 2009, which was 2 years after we did the 2007 video, I had both my shoulders replaced because of the necrosis that I talked about in the second video. I've had pneumonia 5 times.
In 2019, I had a heart attack, and I've had angioplasty, which means I have a stent in one of my valves. And each time it has brought me to think about the fact that I'm HIV positive and to be very aware of what kind of treatment I've been involved in, how the medical profession treated me, and how I could protect myself going through those illnesses. I have COPD because I was a smoker for a long time, and so now I have inhalers. A lot of things that happen to you when you're aging, you kind of put HIV on the shelf, particularly if your HIV is stable. If you're undetectable, you see your doctor regularly, you take your meds. The comorbidities with aging tend to take over, and that's where you concentrate, because in the long run, the HIV is accelerating the comorbidities, so you have to stay on top of them. I am a co-founder of a commission through the Baltimore City Health Department that is studying how older, what we call long-term survivors, which are older women living with HIV, what our needs are, what our attitudes are about living with HIV, how we see ourselves, how we see our future. HIV is not a death sentence. We've been saying that for a long time, and it has become true because we are the first generation of long-term survivors. There's nobody before us. So we're in uncharted territory. This is all new. When you get to be 75 years old and you have HIV, there's nobody before that's been 75 years old with HIV. So all this is new. And what we say is people need to be aware of their health. They need support. We have buddy programs. We need to be talking to each other, because the senior part of your life has its own clarifications. Most seniors are solitary. They can be sedentary, and when you're an HIV person, that's almost a death sentence, because you're not talking to anybody. Nobody's talking to you. You don't have any relationships, so you don't take care of yourself. There's nobody to take care of you. So we're looking at how those things impact ageism as you get older with HIV. We're not very aware because we're not talking about HIV. We're not, we have sporadic commercials on television about HIV meds. Transmission rates in certain parts of the country are very high. Education is lax. It's almost like we're going backwards because we created medicines that help you live with a chronic disease, but we didn't have the education to follow up with it. And a lot of this country is very rural, and the social determinants of health are very clear about which populations get information and which don't, and which get medical treatment and which don't. And HIV now is on a track of how we can end HIV by 2030. That ain't happening. We're always going to have HIV because we don't teach it right. We don't talk about it enough. When we get to a point of a level of comfort, it goes away. Not only publicly, but also in our churches. In the year 2000 and in year 2007, we were in a panic. We're not in a panic anymore. You know, people can get HIV and you have a med to give them. But the education is not there. The prevention is not there. We have not instilled in the children that they are not invincible, that they can get HIV at the drop of a hat if they are not careful, if they don't have the education. The resources are not there. In Baltimore City, there were 10,000 programs talking about HIV and prevention. Now, there are very few. HIV has changed in that treatment and prevention have become one. So that has lessened the education. The doctors are not teaching. They're just treating. I still teach. I still belong to organizations that are evolving with HIV. We are still pushing for money. We're still working within the United States Council on HIV and the advisory committee to keep the word. We're still pushing for recognition that this is and could be just as bad as COVID is now. It only takes a blink of an eye, and we're off and running again. So I'm still out there talking. I talk to my clients because I'm not afraid to disclose that I'm HIV to strangers. And I can stripe up a conversation in a minute that goes in that direction. There's youth groups that talk about HIV. There's the Commission on Aging, Long-Term Survivor Commission, that talks about aging and HIV, and we go into the nursing homes and the senior centers. But they're sporadic. They're not as abundant as they used to be. Okay.
Well, first of all, I'd have to say that what's different is I'm older. I'll be 78 years old. I am 78 years old. And there's been a lot of challenges to come my way. So, for example, since 2007, I've had a stroke that has led to a lot of other things at the same time, because there have been a lot of things to come to bear since I've had the stroke. For example, there have been a lot of falls. There has been osteoporosis. There's been spinal stenosis. There's been renal failure that I hadn't had in 2000 or 2007. As a result of that, I have had to move. I'm located now in Fort Washington, whereas my family is in Baltimore. And as a result of that, I have become isolated, if you will. And it's caused me to reach out in a different kind of way, which is not to reach out at all, really. You know, I'm pretty isolated and to myself. That has caused me to think about moving back to Baltimore. I've been in Fort Washington now for about 2.5 years, and I have not made any friends. I don't have any support there except for my son and his wife. So there's really no reason for me to be there. And I'm thinking seriously about moving back to Baltimore. One thing that has happened since 2000 is that the meds have changed. And now, instead of taking 4 or 5 medications, HIV medications, I take 1, just down to 1. In terms of how it affected me personally, the falls have resulted in my having many visits to the rehabilitation centers. I've been in every rehabilitation centers in Baltimore, and one in Fort Washington, Waldorf, Maryland. And that has changed my whole outlook, if you will, to HIV. Because what it does when you're in a rehabilitation center, for any of those of you who have been in one, it isolates you. It you lose people. People don't come to see you. And just to give you an example, I went through a period of time when I was mentally affected, in that I didn't know where I was or who I was or what was going on or anything. And as you have said to me, you didn't expect me to come back to the point where I am now. And I did. I came back. While I was in the rehabilitation centers, there was a problem with not getting the HIV meds. For example, it was it could have been a result of miscommunication as to what I was supposed to take and what dosage I was supposed to take, and that got confused. I got all confused. I was at a point where I couldn't talk for myself, so other people had to make input into that. And things they finally got straightened out, and I started getting the meds that I needed. But for a period of time, I was getting medications that was taking the right medications, but they were giving it to me the wrong dosage. Those things affected my HIV status in that my viral load did drop initially because I was not getting the right dose of medicine. Eventually it evened out and it stabilized, and I came back to almost to where I was. I never regained the full, I'm gonna mess this up. I didn't get back to where I was. For example, when I was first put in the rehabilitation center, my T cells were almost close to 1,000. They dropped to 700, and they never went back up. They stayed constantly at 700. I would probably say the same things that I was saying in 2000 and 2007. In 2021, that message hasn't changed. The message is, to take care of yourself, protect yourself. So in that way, the message hasn't changed. In the future, I would hope that I would be more stabilized. I hope to come back to Baltimore, and with that, and more, what's the word I want? More help, in the Baltimore community, that I would be looking forward to getting back to where I was, especially mentally. I can't put words together, I can't get thoughts together to relate what I want to say. And I'm hoping that all of that would eventually, I would kind of just mellow into, that existence where I was in 2000 or 2007. Right now, in order to get around, I don't get around, except to get to doctor appointments, and I get Metro Access to do that. Other than that, I don't have anybody to come and get me or because I don't make friends easily. I have been able to reach out into the community that I live in. I don't know why that is. I guess because I am the way I am. You know, I isolate and I self-isolate, you know? And so a lot of times I'm by myself. I'm to myself. And that's what I'm hoping to change.
The difference from 2000 was, I think I only had about 12 years or 13 years living with HIV. I was 48. Today, I have over 30 years living with HIV. And I'm 68. So I've gotten a lot older, a lot mature. I grew up a whole lot. I accept my HIV. I accept who I am more. I think very, very good of myself. I don't wake up thinking I'm gonna die. I wake up thinking, what is there left to do today? I completed a lot of my goals. It's time to set new ones. I'm a retiree as of this year. I'm feeling real good about that. I went from, in 2002, it was like I wasn't going to work, and every month I was going to quit my job. I wound up staying there like 26 years. My parents died. Most all my family is gone except for my sisters. And through it all, I'm still clean. I'm still new with HIV. Still nothing really ever went on with me since I've been positive but the diagnosis. And I'm healthier than I ever been. I'm 69 years old. I don't even know if I can remember that far back. What I would say different for me is I don't live in fear at all no more. I finally understand that everything that happened to me is through God's grace and His mercy. I think that I remember when I was diagnosed, they said I had to change. I would still say you have to change. I had to change my lifestyle. I had to change my living habits. I mean, as far as what I eat, what I do. I had to make more positive choices. Most of all, I still say you have to accept who you are. That was one of the biggest challenges I had to do, was accept who I am. Learn how to love me. Know that I'm the most important person. I had to accept I had to put my HIV living in front of everything and everybody. And sometimes I really fall short of that. And if you're HIV, try to keep all your doctor appointments. And I learned that you're only as sick as your darkest secret, so you got to tell somebody. If you ain't got to go tell the world, but you need to at least tell one person that can trust and believe in you, and have somebody to talk to. Find a support group. Definitely find. It's not really support groups like they used to be, but they still are support groups. I guess the biggest thing, keep it short, just let somebody know who you are, what you're thinking at all times. The stigma, I believe, is going to always be there, but it's just so much other stuff now. COVID-19, that caused a lot of people to shut down, be isolated, learn, spend more time with themselves. So like more talking about that than HIV now. It's like all the fears back, people scared. they so scared of being around people that got COVID. I don't even think they think about HIV as much, because you hear less about HIV. I know for a fact that having that HIV have changed my whole life in a more positive way than it ever have been. Through HIV, I have been able to see the world. I remember my first trip to Africa because I was HIV. I remember my first trip to Paris because I was HIV. My first trip to Vancouver because I was HIV. Meeting people all over the world that was just like me. Spending time with people just like me, not judgmental, just was happy to meet somebody else just like them. It put a whole impact in a different lifestyle my whole life. HIV also helped me in my recovery. It helped me to stay clean a day at a time. I remember when I first found out I was positive. I thought I was going to die from drug addiction. I later learned on that a drug addiction would have killed me just as fast as HIV, but it helped me, become more serious about my recovery. 33 years later in recovery. It helped me as far as a job. I am a multipreneur, then I was a hustler, and I wasn't going to never stop hustling and get an 8-hour job. And HIV helped me get my job. I got my job specifically because I was HIV positive, and I knew the streets. And 26 years later, from me being HIV positive, getting that job, I become a retiree. And so yes, to that question, yes, it changed my whole life. They were a trip to a World AIDS conference. The first time I was able to go was because they wanted me to speak about being a long-term survivor. It was like I had to tell my story for about 10 minutes and about living with HIV, which helped me grow the most. I remember from the first trip, made like the centerfold, like Playboy book, and they had a centerfold. I was in the centerfold of the book. They had papers that run through about all the speakers there, and I was like in the centerfold of just speaking, talking about living with HIV. I would hope that if it just touched one person to hear this video and to know that just because you HIV, you still a woman, you still a girl, you still a teenager, you still who you are. And to give them hope that there is life after the diagnosis of HIV. If somebody like me, 20 years of using, being molested, how I overcome being a survivor, how I overcome the drug addiction, how I was like a mama baby trapped in the basement of my mother's house, how HIV changed my whole life once I accepted it. And I could be whoever I want to be, I could go wherever I want to go, and I could have anything that I want to have. And I would just hope that one person would get that message that there's life after diagnosis of HIV.
What has empowered me over the last 20 some years is knowing women who are living with HIV and AIDS, women who are not giving up in spite of the stigma that was 21 years ago. They're pushed forward. They have had challenges, but they hung in there. They didn't give up. They were willing to self-disclose.
whatever shame that some people saw, they pushed past that. And that's encouraging to me. That gave me strength to get to know these women that are loving, kind, considerate, accepting of me. The only thing I can tell you is that 21 years ago, by the grace of God, I was working in the field of HIV and AIDS, doing HIV education and prevention. And that's how the first video came about. And since that first video, I just had the desire to let people know that living with HIV and AIDS was not a death sentence. That they could live, they could continue with their life, and there was no shame in being HIV positive, just like there was no shame in having diabetes or high blood pressure. They had a disease, and they gave out some information that was not false, because there was so many different stigmas. I remember working in the field and having a young lady that I interviewed who parents would not let her eat out of their plates or use their silverware out of fear they would contract HIV. So there have been times that it weighed heavy on my heart, and then there are times that there was joy. These women don't even know how much they have taught me in this experience. I want to thank you guys. You may have seen this as a benefit to you, but I need to tell you, I am the one that has benefited the most from this experience. My perspective today is so different than it was 21 years ago. And at that time, I thought my perspective was great. But today, I look back and I see it totally different. I see it from the eyes of a 76-year-old today. And when I had asked about the physical challenges that you had, I didn't particularly ask anyone to talk about them directly. What I was looking for was for people to see that y'all had challenges and y'all came out looking great. That's all. That there are people that living with HIV today that are having challenges, physical challenges, and they are afraid. But you guys have had them, all 5 of you, and you come out on the other side looking like new money. And that's what I wanted women to see. Just because you had a stroke or just because you had a heart attack doesn't mean you can't get, or today, just because you have COVID-19 don't mean that you won't live and get up and keep going. HIV is not a death sentence. Some people have benefited more from having HIV than anything else. And my friend Bert has got to travel the world because she had HIV. She got to stop being a hustler on the street and have her own business. That's who she is. My friend Sybil has got to retire from the United States government after 50 years. That's a little exaggeration. And my friend Marilyn has got up from the deathbed and is now my miracle friend. And my friend Stephanie does her own business. She's older than me, y'all. No, she's not. And she has her own business. She lived with HIV and AIDS. That's not who she is, none of these women. And Troy, my friend Troy is a minister in the church. 2 grandchildren that she's raising. So these women, They're magnificent. Thank you.